Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs absolutely just blew out the Pittsburgh Steelers yesterday, 36-10. They won their sixth straight AFC West title, which had never been done before, winning six. Never been done before in that division. In fact, this is the first time during this recent winning streak for the Chiefs that they've won back-to-back AFC West titles. That had never been done before for the Kansas City Chiefs. All kinds of history they're shattering, or records they're shattering, and history they're creating and trailblazing every single year with this team. And there's an axiom in the NFL, which is that, especially in the NFL, but really this can be applied to almost any single sport, is that teams are never defined by the first 2 months of the season, by September and October. You can never fully characterize or encapsulate a team based off the 2 first months of the year. It certainly is important to play well in the first 2 months of the season, and it can set the tone for how your season will start out, but you're never defined by the first 2 months. That's never when you're in the heart of division and conference play. The magnitude of the games aren't quite as important during the first couple months of the year. They're early benchmarks. They're early measuring sticks, but that doesn't define a team. It's just the first half of the season. When you marinate a protein, it takes time for the flavors to coalesce and to amalgamate. You never marinate a protein the day of you want to cook it. You marinate it the night before to get the fully enriched flavor. That's something that chefs will tell you all the time. You never do that. So similarly, it's about how you perform in the second half of the year, in November, in December, when the magnitude of the moment is heightened, when the significance is elevated, when the eyeballs are augmented onto your team. There are more eyeballs watching you play, more nationally televised games, greater importance. These are the things that come into play. These are the factors in the second half of the season. And here's the interesting thing about the Kansas City Chiefs. They have won 22 consecutive games in the months of November and December. Think about that. At the most critical junctures of the season, most critical times of the year, the Kansas City Chiefs have won 22 consecutive games in the months of November and December. Is it always pretty? No. And I was just talking about how with the Green Bay Packers, it's not always pretty. But similarly to them, they find ways to win. It's simple as that. When they have to play at their best, they do. When they have to start rounding into form before the postseason, they do. And for this team to look up, and they started the year 3-4 through October. They've won 8 straight games now. And they've got the best record in the AFC again at 11-4 again. And you just have to marvel at what they've been able to achieve so far through this stretch of about 3 years right now. Again, we all kind of wrote this team, or most people wrote this team off. I was still holding on for dear life that they could make the playoffs, but there are some serious doubts, serious questions about whether or not this team could even reach the postseason, let alone have the top record in the AFC conference. And to be honest, I wasn't even going to talk about the Chiefs. I didn't plan to talk about the Chiefs today. No Travis Kelce. He didn't have his security blanket was Mahomes. I wasn't planning about talking about this game because I wasn't sure how much I'd be able to glean from it. And then you look up and they just smash mouth the Steelers in the first half. They led 23-0 at the half. And Mahomes, you could see the growth. You can see the maturity in Mahomes. He wasn't forcing things down the field. He was taking what the defense was giving him. He was checking it down to about 9 or 10 different receivers. So he was trusting his guys. They were trusting the run game. I mean, obviously, Byron Pringle had a field day, two passing touchdowns that he collected. And you had Derek Gore and Clyde Edwards-Helaire running with confidence. And hopefully Clyde Edwards-Helaire can recover in time for the postseason. He kind of banged up his shoulder. But again, the Mahomes threw to about 9 or 10 different guys. And if someone was going to tell you, if you're an NFL fan, the Kansas City Chiefs, without Travis Kelce, and with Tyreek Hill only having 2 catches for 19 yards, both in the first quarter, are going to blow out the Pittsburgh Steelers 36-10, you'd be laughing. You would have expected the score to be much closer. And yet, that was the reality. And the reason why this change in large part has happened is because of the Chiefs' defense. The Chiefs' defense has been resolute and has been growing in confidence every single week. This is a Chiefs defense that surprisingly, and again, I don't really care that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense isn't that explosive. I don't really care. You beat a team, or you're up on a team 23-0 at the half. That's noteworthy. That is absolutely noteworthy. They've been the best first quarter team in the NFL over the last 7 weeks. They haven't given up a single point in 7 straight first quarters. They haven't given up a single point in 7 straight first quarters. They haven't allowed a team to score over 10 points in their last 4 home games. They haven't allowed a team to score over 10 points in its last 4 home games. And in 5 straight games, they haven't allowed a touchdown in the first half. That trade for Melvin, wow, can't even talk. Melvin Ingram has been a life preserver. He's been a game changer. He's been that big playmaker, that big pass rusher, edge rusher that they've needed. He's been a godsend for them because he's changed the way that they're able to play. Frank Clark, these guys are now starting to get some pressure up front. And it's shaking out like this team may have to, or where the AFC may have to go through Arrowhead again. And the way that this team plays at home, the way that, more importantly, this defense plays at home versus the way that they play on the road could be the difference. Could absolutely be the difference. Now, for the Pittsburgh Steelers, let me just say this. Because, to be honest, they still have a shot at making the playoffs. That's how wide open the AFC is. It's the wild, wild west in the AFC. So they still have a great shot of making the postseason. But they've been unraveling as well. But it's not unraveling in terms of, their offense is just falling off and all the wheels are breaking down on this car. No, their character has been unraveling. Their discipline, their focus, that's what's been unraveling. Because the past several weeks, especially on offense, there have been just so many boneheaded, egotistical, just lack of focus, lack of discipline types of penalties that they've accrued that are having a deleterious effect on the outcomes of games. We saw Chase Claypool a couple weeks ago against the Minnesota Vikings. He was celebrating a first down catch, and he wasted away precious seconds that the Steelers would have loved to have had back to potentially tie the game. And then we saw McLeod yesterday, even though the Steelers were already down by 30 at that point. He makes a first down reception, and he's starting to taunt the Chiefs sideline. So It was a big completion of about 15 yards, and now you give it right back because of unsportsmanlike conduct. And it's just boneheaded discipline types of penalties that they continue to be whistled for and penalized for. And that's just so unbecoming of a Mike Tomlin-led team. It's surprising that that's the type of culture that he's fostered at this point, that he's allowed. And that's where the Pittsburgh Steelers have been unraveling to me. It's not simply that, okay, they score 10 points, they've got no run game. That's the reality, whatever. But it's from a character discipline standpoint. When you think about the Pittsburgh Steelers, you think about the days of the Steel Curtain and Terry Bradshaw. And even in the first couple successful runs with Big Ben, discipline was never in question with the Steelers. That just wasn't the case. And now we're seeing it. Obviously, the NFL has been cracking down on taunting. Just as a collective team, they demonstrated a lack of heart. I mean, outside of Najee Harris, who that guy is a tremendous talent. I feel badly. He's a workhorse, but you're not seeing the positives yet with him because he's having to avoid. It's almost like Saquon Barkley in his first couple years with the Giants, and even now you could still argue, where he's having to evade 2 or 3 defenders just to get back to the original line of scrimmage. He's trying to create for his team. Just not much going on. Outside of Najee Harris, Big Ben, who's competing. He doesn't have much juice left in the tank. He's competing. And TJ Watt, who's battling through cracked ribs. There's just no heart. Everyone else simply left it at the door. Maybe, and I'll throw in Cameron Hayward in there as well. Outside of that, I mean, they just simply have been outperformed like everywhere they go. And it's just surprising. The rest of the team just packed it in. They really just packed it in. And again, the Chiefs, as I mentioned, positioning themselves best record in the AFC. Now, they've won 8 straight games, but their final 2 games of the year are going to be tough. They go at the Bengals and at the Broncos to close out the final 2 games of the year. They do have a 1-game advantage over the Tennessee Titans, who are at 10-5. But if they lose another game, if there's another slippage by the Chiefs, then they'll lose that home field advantage. But so it's 2 difficult road games to close out the year. But man, what a final statement in their regular season home finale. Talk about a way to close out the year at home, especially at Arrowhead. That was an impressive performance by the Kansas City Chiefs.